this awful relationship with central government, which libertarianism will have hell's own time to break. That's one of the things I want to find out from you guys today. It set in motion a kind of doomsday machine, in other words, in which all this wonderful stuff is promised to people, and the dependencies that are therein promised are so widely popular. And we are now a relatively prosperous country. Here's our president, who is wildly popular still, according to some. How do you bust into that? Again, it goes to the idea of libertarianism achieving real gains among the people. You know, this slimy character in the White House and his bustling busybody of a wife now having the absolute gall to run for the U.S. Senate from New York, and doing it with her typical demagogic baffle-gab about being there for the children and likely winning. And these are some of the terms you have to watch out for. This is the quintessential, when you hear the term demagogue, you think of a screaming, ranting lunatic. But she and her ilk are the real demagogues, because this is the ultimate conversation killer, you see. If it's guns, if it's smoking, if it is any interventionism of any sort, that ought to be the enemy and the antithesis of anything that libertarianism stands for. It is contained in that phrase, for the children. We're doing it for the children. And so this is a very, very, very powerful adversary that we face. Another issue I want to take up with you folks today. I mean, how do you counter that? What is the best remedy for that state of mind which is so widely popular in the country today? George W. Bush, probably not a huge amount better. He's probably going to be our next president. Better than some. Essentially a creature of central government. Very, very little will change, it seems to me, under a George W. Bush administration, especially from a true and pure libertarian perspective. I can see very, very little promise there, except, with one major exception, the advances of the affirmative action perversion of civil rights will be checked to some degree by his court appointments, which is a good thing. And if hard cases come down to it, a reason to vote for George W. Bush as opposed to Bill Bradley or Gore. And I'm thinking now it's even between Bradley and Gore. I can see that Gore is in that powerful lead that earlier was thought. So I've made a list of a bunch of questions here. I'll just read it off like a laundry list and see what you guys do. I've already mentioned, what do libertarians want? Do they want political power, more indirect influence? How do you achieve one without the other? How do you achieve the indirect influence without power? How many gradations of libertarians are there? Is it possible to be partly libertarian? Is it possible to be a kind of cafeteria libertarian? It is, I don't want that. No. Does America have a leadership role in the world? And if so, what, according to libertarian thought and the libertarian ideal? Obviously, we don't want to be in Kosovo. We don't want to be the sheriff or the deputy sheriff in the sense of NATO or the UN. I mean, we're no longer even calling the shots on the basis, at least ostensibly, of some of our recent involvement. So how much of a cop does a libertarian want us to be? Is there still a role for the grandeur of American leadership as advocated by the neocons, William Crystal and others? Conservatives, supposedly, not very libertarian obviously, are arguing for a restoration, Reagan style, of America's powerful, colossus military role in the world. Is that what libertarians want? I think not, but I want to hear from you folks. Some of the stuff we know, we need not spend too much time on today, you know, drugs and guns, and some of the seat belts, helmets, you know, these are some of the smaller fights that we've heard from libertarians about. Do you aspire to other larger engagements is another question. You know, the entitlements. I don't hear much from libertarians about the entitlements, but I can imagine where you guys are going with it. Affirmative action we've mentioned, the schools and how to reform them. There's been a good deal about that, but I want to hear it from you. Scenic preservation, the power of the community to veto individual property owners' desires. You want some kind of circusy-looking display at your house. The neighborhood says no. What's the libertarian position on that? One is the pure expression of your property rights. The other is you have an overarching obligation to your neighbors not to injure their aesthetic desires by putting up too many Christmas lights, whatever it is. How does the libertarian come down on that? One very important consideration that I want to hear from you folks about is the role of the trial lawyer. The trial lawyer, by the conventional conservative rhetoric of today, is the enemy of everything decent and fine and kind and every other worthwhile American tradition. If you read any of the conservative magazines, not libertarian, but conservative, Weekly Standard, National Review, and a few others, it is a constant railing against the growing, powerful influence of the American trial lawyers who are doing everything to destroy this country, whether through their advocacy of this pogrom against the tobacco industry, or they're pushing forward these pseudo-civil rights initiatives like the Americans with Disabilities Act, all their members taking over important judgeships. How does a libertarian feel about trial lawyers when you consider that if much of the nanny goat, and I call it the nanny goat state, by the way, not just the nanny state, because nanny state is too kind. Nanny state implies at least sincerity and purity of maternal purpose for the state. I say it's a nanny goat state because implicitly there's the idea of eating. I'm going to keep on eating until I'm full to the bursting. It's about me, the goat, not the nanny part, but the goat part. Trial lawyers are very important in whatever future libertarian state emerges, it seems to me. They are the ultimate cop, aren't they? So if you're, here's a kind of a real collision between the conservative philosophy, not that I'm going to suggest there's any conservative about libertarianism, I'm not. Trial lawyers are portrayed as the enemy of everything decent and fine today by the conservative movement. Do libertarians feel the same way about trial lawyers? That's enough for starters. And I'll take your questions. Hi, Mr. Backrack. I need some water, by the way. How much can you pass me my water glass?
I think one of the things that you'll find is that we're not monolithic, and that there is a range of opinions on lots of things. Just responding to your issue about the libertarian movement, there are several facets to the movement. We're here, the Libertarian Party of Michigan. We're a political organization, Libertarian Party of one county. But there are other libertarian groups, like the Advocates for Self-Government, that is not political, that is trying to move the culture. There's Cato Institute, think tanks like that, that are attempting to affect policy in other ways. So it's not just one thing. I think for myself, I don't think a lot of us necessarily want to see that we have to gain power. We're trying to hopefully change the culture so that it doesn't matter who wins. What the public will accept from their leaders is such that we'll only get a limited government that can do those things that are legitimate for a government to do.
So you would support, say, the Cato Institute model of influencing the direction of government.
In fact, I do support that, in addition to
I mean, that as an alternative to, from school board to state rep to congressman, and however long it takes eventually.
I mean, it's a multi-pronged attack that I think that we're trying to